Gen Z lazy? Always on their phones? Or is there a bigger picture here? Boomers think Gen Z just don't want to work. But is that really the case? Is Gen Z really lazy? Or are they just redefining what work should look like? While boomers see a lack of effort, Gen Z sees a broken system. So who's really right? And what are we all missing here? In this video, we're diving into why Gen Z and boomers have such different views on work and what boomers are missing about the whole picture. So grab a seat, let's talk about it. To really understand where boomers are coming from, we've got to rewind the tape a bit. They were raised with a clear message: work hard, stay loyal to your job, and eventually, you'll be rewarded. That meant putting in long hours, climbing the ladder, and sticking with a company for the long haul. And for a lot of them, it actually worked. They got a house, got the car, the family vacations, pensions were a real thing. Stability felt achievable. And for many boomers, that work ethic became a huge part of their identity and who they were. So now, when they see younger generations, especially Gen Z, questioning that system or choosing different paths, it can be, well, confusing, maybe even frustrating. From their perspective, it can feel like Gen Z's skipping steps, not putting in the same kind of effort. But here's the thing: the world Gen Z is growing up in looks nothing like the one boomers knew. So it's not just that Gen Z doesn't want to work, it's that the old system doesn't seem to work for them. And when you look at it that way, maybe the laziness isn't lazy at all. Maybe it's just a new way of surviving in a very different world. But here's something a lot of boomers might not see. Gen Z didn't grow up in the same world. They saw the economy crash, watched their parents burn out, and grew up with the internet always within reach. Now, they're entering the workforce, and they're doing it their own way. They don't want jobs that take over their whole identity. They're not just asking for flexibility for emergencies or kids. They want flexibility to live, to really live. Add in climate anxiety, political unrest, and housing prices that feel like a pipe dream, and suddenly, working 60 hours a week for a job with no security? That doesn't feel like ambition, it feels like a gamble. For Gen Z, work and life aren't separate, they blend. They freelance, they code, they create, invest, and build personal brands from their bedrooms. They're not lazy, they're just not interested in glorifying burnout. To them, working 70 hours a week? That's the fastest way to lose yourself. They're not chasing jobs, they're building lives. Boomers, and let's be clear before we go any further, we respect you. We love you. You were raised in a time when hard work meant moving up in life. A part-time job could pay for your college tuition. One income was enough to buy a house, raise a family, and still save for retirement. You stayed in one job for 20 years, then left with a pension. But for Gen Z, well, that world's long gone. College tuition is through the roof. Housing in most cities, out of reach. And wages? Well, they've barely moved while the cost of living just keeps climbing up. Here's an example. Take Sarah, 24. She works a full-time job and runs a small Etsy shop on the side. Not because she's bored, but because her paycheck doesn't even cover rent in her city. Then there's Mike, a boomer who spent 40 years at the same company. Now he looks at today's job market and wonders where all the loyalty went. These aren't just opinions. They are real stories from real people living through a real shift. Their stories say more than stats ever could. They show us how the world of work is changing, one person at a time. And it's not that Gen Z doesn't want to work hard, they just don't want to work hard for a system that no longer works for them. Now, here's where the misunderstanding really kicks in. To many boomers, working long hours isn't just about getting ahead, It's a badge of honor. It shows loyalty, dedication, and pride in your work. But for Gen Z, it's different. Setting boundaries and protecting their time, that's not laziness, it's self-respect. To older generations, hopping from job to job every year or two might look like being flaky or unreliable. But Gen Z sees it a different way. They're not avoiding responsibility. They're refusing to stay in environments that drain them or make them feel undervalued. They watched burnout up close. They've seen loyalty go unrewarded. So now, they're choosing something different. They're not giving up. They're not willing to sacrifice their mental health for a paycheck. They're not quitting. They're simply choosing themselves. Here's something a lot of people tend to overlook. Gen Z is hustling, just not in the same way older generations are used to seeing. They're picking up new skills on YouTube and Reddit threads and through online courses. They're building real connections in digital spaces, on Discord servers and group chats across niche online communities. They're landing freelance gigs through DMs, running side hustles straight from their phones, and turning their passions into paychecks. They're not always chasing the traditional 9 to 5, and honestly, who can blame them? That path doesn't feel all that secure anymore. Their version of work, it's flexible, it's digital, and it's incredibly personal. Just because it doesn't come with a desk, a commute, or a retirement plan doesn't mean it's not real work, right? A lot of what they do happens quietly, behind the scenes across time zones, while the rest of the world tries to keep up with how fast everything is changing. So before we label them crazy or unmotivated, maybe we need to take a step back and look a little closer. Because Gen Z isn't opting out, they're adapting, they're creating, they're changing the game, and doing it entirely on their own terms. But let's be real, no one is perfect. Gen Z has their own set of challenges. Some struggle with face-to-face communication, especially after growing up online. Others come in with high expectations, like landing a management role or securing remote work straight out of school. And then there's the anxiety, a lot of it. Gen Z is reporting some of the highest rates of mental health struggles we've ever seen. Burnout, depression, imposter syndrome, they're not just buzzwords, they're real, and they're getting worse. In a 2023 Deloitte survey, nearly half of Gen Z workers, 46%, said they feel burned out at work. For boomers, that number was closer to 25%. That gap, it says a lot. But here's the thing, Gen Z doesn't hide it. They talk about it, they post about it, they ask for help. And maybe, just maybe, that kind of honesty will lead to better workplaces for everyone. Because pretending everything's fine when it's not strength, that's just silence. And Gen Z is done being silent. Remember when people stayed at the same job for 30 years? Yeah, it's not really how things work anymore. Gen Z knows that kind of job security isn't always just guaranteed anymore. They've grown up through economic turndowns, mass layoffs, student debt, and a global pandemic. So they learn to keep their options open. Instead of chasing titles or sticking to one path, they're focused on building real transferable skills. Skills that can move with them, no matter where they go. They're not afraid to change direction, try something new, or walk away from a job that doesn't align with their goals or values. That's not about being flaky, it's about being strategic. In a world that changes fast, Gen Z is learning how to pivot, adapt, and create their own opportunities instead of waiting for someone else to hand them one. So, when they move on or switch things up, it's not quitting, it's playing the long game and making sure they're always ready for whatever comes next. Let's be real, both generations bring something valuable to the table. Boomers offer experience, wisdom, and a long-term view that's been shaped by decades of hard work. They know the value of persistence and patience. Gen Z, they bring fresh ideas, digital fluency, and a real focus on mental health and boundaries. They're challenging outdated systems and asking, why do we do it this way? And that's a good thing. The best workplaces aren't stuck in the past, but they're not just chasing trends either. They listen, they evolve, and they grow with their people. So maybe instead of arguing about who's right, it's time to start collaborating, because the future of work isn't just up to Gen Z or Boomers. It's something we build together. When each generation shows up with their strengths, something better happens. We create space for innovation, balance, and real progress. We've all got something to teach and something to learn. So let's stop pointing fingers and start building bridges, because the future of work, it doesn't belong to one generation. Here's the thing. At the core of it, both generations want the same things: stability, purpose, and a good life. They've just had to take different roads to get there. Different times, different challenges. For Boomers, it was about hard work, long hours, and loyalty to one company. For Gen Z, it's about adaptability, flexibility, and finding meaning in a rapidly changing world. So maybe it's not Gen Z versus Boomers. Maybe it's time we stop pointing fingers and start having a real conversation. One where both sides listen, one where both sides learn. Because here's the truth. We're all just trying to figure it out. And if we really want a better future at work, we're going to have to build it together. We can bring the wisdom of the past and fresh perspective of the future and create something that works for everyone. It's not about choosing sides. It's about coming together and shaping a future where everyone can thrive. So let's start listening. Let's start learning. So what does this all mean for the future of work? The way we think about work is shifting, and it's happening faster than most of us realize. With AI, remote work, and digital platforms transforming everything, Gen Z's flexible, purpose-driven mindset isn't just a phase. It might actually be the future. But here's the real question. Are companies and older generations ready to keep up? Because this isn't just about learning the newest tech or hopping on the next trend. It's about rethinking what work means. It's not just about clocking in and out anymore. It's about balance. It's about making room for mental health, creativity, and a life outside of work. And here's the thing. The future of work isn't something one generation can figure out on its own. It's something we all have to shape together by listening, learning, and making space for new ideas and for each other to thrive. If this video gave you something to think about, go ahead and hit that like button. It really helps out and means a lot to us here at Classroom 101. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on the bell so you don't miss what's coming next. I'd love to hear your perspective. Go ahead and drop a comment whether you're Gen Z, a Boomer, or somewhere in between. How do you see work changing? What's your experience been like? Thanks so much for watching. Take care, and I'll catch you in the next one. Signing off for now.